record on this computer. And
Hey, it's Terry Bean. Another great episode of Business Growth Time. Maybe not so great if you're not into virtual reality, because that's what we're talking about today. With me, as always, the lovely, the talented, the one and only Janet E. Johnson, where today the E stands for E Live. Oh, wait, no, it's B Live. I'm sorry. I get those things confused.
That's
E
a good
Live.
one, though. That's a good
Yeah,
one.
that's kind of close because we're recording with E Live next. I'm so excited.
We are. Yes, we're going to try another software, and then that's more about the Facebook Live type thing. It's called Be Live. You got it.
Be live. So that'll be a thrill a minute. So if you check out episode 91, because this is episode 90, means we're 10 away from that SEMA number 100.
I know. Can you believe it?
Are we going to do something? Do we have to have a thing?
I don't know what we've got. We almost need to look back at our past guests and see who would want to jump on with us. We could almost just do a Be Live in our group and invite past guests to jump on and off with us.
We have a thing now. That's what we're doing.
There
I
you
love
go.
that idea. So we'll have to schedule that out in advance and give people plenty of notice.
Yep.
So I know that has nothing to do with virtual reality, people, and you people are just dying to know about virtual reality and what's going on.
Just dying.
Just dying. Like, oh my God, tell us more. Yeah, it's weird. We haven't done this for a minute. It's kind of
I know.
good to see you.
Yes, I know. I got to hear what's going on in the virtual reality world.
The virtual reality. So this is kind of an update from an episode we did like back in February when I jumped into the virtual reality space. You know, it's been kind of wild. So this episode's going to touch on VR, but it's also going to touch on being a startup business, because
that's cool.
We've done both, right? We've been a startup, and honestly, between you and I and anybody who's listening, I think we're now actually a business, which is kind of
that start. You're an up business.
We are an up business, so yeah, we're straight up starting still. But I think we're going to be a business, right? The three most important words in startup are just don't die, and I think we've made it. Right?
That's cool.
I think we've made it, and maybe I'm telling tales out of school, but you know, the sales are in, installs are happening, business is growing, emails are coming in from customers saying, "Holy crap, we can't believe how much this stuff is generating for us."
Oh, cool!
Yay!
Cool.
And we've got like a marquee client already. You're familiar with Kalahari, right? In Wisconsin Dells, the big Kalahari.
Oh yeah, that's the place we always want to go. We go to Wilderness, but yeah,
so
totally known what Kalahari is. Yep, been in there.
We just installed in a Kalahari in Sandusky for our first pilot.
Oh yeah, they have another one in Sandusky. Yes,
and then they've got one in Pennsylvania. And I mean, I'm talking to guys in the vending space. They're like, "You're in Kalahari?"
Yeah.
Like, like
legit I know. That's why we pick the Wilderness over Kalahari, because that's like the elite, you know. Wilderness is less expensive, you know. That's funny.
So that part's cool. And we, you know, the day I was installing that, we were installing a whole nother place in Illinois. So we had 2 installations going on at the same time, and like 4 more booked out the next week. So it's crazy, and the pipeline's big and robust, and opportunity is good, and we found a vein. So that's really more about the startup than the VR, but the VR itself has been pretty cool too. So a couple of things are happening in the space, at least from the actual gaming perspective. Let's call it the out-of-home entertainment world. The biggest thing is there's discussion about licensing content, because game developers spend an inordinate amount of time building a game, which costs an inordinate amount of money, they want to make that money back somehow. And historically, and you're a PlayStation family, as I recall, we've discussed this in the past. If you went to go buy a PlayStation game, you would throw down your $59.99 or your whatever that amount is, but it's usually right around that. Yeah, and you would have the game, and you could play the game as much as you want. Right? And you could have friends come over and they could play that game too. And it's not a big deal, because you're not really selling usage of that game, right? You're not charging people to come play. So it's not a commercial play. It's for a consumer market. That's a decent model. in a commercial market where you're actually selling it, you have to come up with a little different model, because you can't just pay one time and then let everybody else make money off of the thing you built, right? You can't charge your customer if you're a game developer. You can't charge them once
Oh,
and then have it, just keep making money. It's almost like a movie, right? It costs $1 billion to make a movie,
yes.
and they charge everybody a ticket at price, right? Over and over and over. So what we're doing now is kind of this per minute charge. So we are working with licensing for these software developers, where we handle all of that for them. So we're managing the amount that people are paying the developer every time a
I
game is played.
see.
So it's really, really cool from the developer's perspective, because they're getting paid and they like it. And we've got developers that are making $2,000 a month on games they've developed. And we're brand new, right? We're 6 months old, just getting started. So
Well, and it's a
imagine
residual.
every month. Right.
Yes.
So for every minute that gets played, these guys are getting, maybe it's 6 cents, maybe it's 12 cents, maybe it's 20 cents a minute, depending on the game. But so for every minute, our customers, right, the VR arcades where we're installing our equipment into the
Yeah.
VR arcade, they're paying us, maybe it's 12 to 15 cents. We're splitting that with a different, depending on who the developer is, we're giving them a chunk of that money.
Yeah.
And that's how that works.
Well, and it gives them because they know they're going to get paid time after time. I mean, this relates almost to an online course or whatever. When if you have an ongoing membership course or something, it's kind of how I would relate to it, then it's worth it for you to continually update that too. Because it's hard to update when you're not making any money on something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Did
put
you
your
learn
time
that
and
from
energy.
15-minute social?
Yes, exactly. So you're like, okay, I have FB Contest Made Simple too. I have another program that people still purchase it here and there, but I'm like, yeah, is it worth my time to update the whole thing? So yeah, I mean, it's definitely makes sense, because in the world that you're talking about, they're going to have to update those games.
They're going to have to update them, and more
Mm-hmm.
importantly, it encourages them to make more new games, right? So they
Mm-hmm.
can take some of that money and say, all right, cool, we're going to
Well, then they'd
invest
make
in
more
building
money.
the next
Yeah.
thing, right?
Yeah.
So, because ultimately, in this space, just like in the digital world or the social media world, content is king. So the biggest thing is getting more content developers out there and giving them ways to make money doing it. So that part has been really, really interesting, and it's carried us some good favor with the developers. But it's also really good for our customers, because our customer doesn't have to sit there and go, wait a second, I got to pay this guy for this game, I got to pay that person for this
Sorry.
game. That's
Sorry,
fascinating.
sorry, it's really loud. I didn't know somebody was going to be printing.
Oh, I thought, you know what? I thought it was that. I thought you had a Roomba vacuum cleaner
Oh
coming
my
through,
gosh,
like
sorry. The
vacuuming
printer's
into your
right next
TV.
to the microphone. Sorry, guys. Okay, go ahead.
Ernie Janet is printing. I'm jealous because I don't have a wireless printer.
Oh no, it's called Jeff upstairs is printing.
Oh, I knew that. I knew. Listen. If you start printing in the middle of our show, young lady,
That means I'm not listening
there's
very
a
well.
whole different conversation. And yeah, no, I knew that wasn't you.
Funny. Okay.
So,
Back to what you were talking about. I kind of we're almost talking the business concept of the VR world. I mean, and I know that obviously the VR world, a lot of people are talking about it, the VR, but how it works, the business model of it, I think is different than what people would have an idea of. And I think,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
nope, go ahead.
Yeah, to some extent, I think you're absolutely right. I think people don't really think about it, right? They just throw on the headset and they're ready to go.
Totally.
And frankly, that's the way it should be. That's
Yeah.
the way you should, because the fun is inside the goggles. The fun isn't what I'm talking about. The experiences inside are what's perfectly amazing. But understanding how it's going to grow and continue and what's going to happen and why you're going to want to go back and check it out is a whole different conversation, right? So the business aspect becomes important, because without it, there is no future of it.
Yeah.
So making sure that the licensing gets handled from a customer standpoint, from a developer standpoint, becomes a really, really important piece, because what's going on in certain VR arcades is they're basically unplugging the internet, right? You can run these games locally, and if you're
Okay.
not plugged into the internet, nobody can track how many minutes are being played, which means that you're not paying the developers. And if you're not paying the developers, what happens to the level of content that gets created? It goes down, right? So, in an
Ah.
effort to make sure everybody's super excited and moving arm in arm, that's why we're doing what we're doing. Because ultimately, he says, holding the HTC Vive, which I have an HTC Vive, I'm super excited about.
Ooh.
Ultimately, the hardware cost is either going to stay the same, which ain't going to last very long, or it's going to go down, right?
Yeah,
So
like
it's
a TV
like a TV,
back in the day.
like a phone, like a
Mm-hmm.
laptop, like all
Yep.
of it, right?
Yep.
Hardware is hardware. It doesn't really matter. It's the experience inside of the hardware that becomes really, really important. And that's the piece that's got to change. And oh, by the way, that's the piece that drives people in. So we got to make sure these developers are taken care of. This is the bottom line. So that becomes
Hmm.
pretty cool. That becomes pretty
Yeah, that's different. And that's completely different than what you're talking about with like the PS4 and that type of thing. Because I know like my son could buy everything right through the Sony PlayStation store, and he was constantly buying games and that kind of thing. And I'm sure developers go there to sell their stuff too, but that's a completely different type of business model.
It is a different type of business model. Although I will say, I was in they call them like a LAN party, right? So the gamers go out to certain areas where there's a bunch of monitors and a bunch of computers and everything kind of hooked up, and just go hang out and spend time almost in an old school arcade, but without consoles, right? It's all computer generated, or it's all Xbox generated, or it's all PlayStation generated, and so they'll put 30 to 40 of these different devices in one space. And I was at a place called High
Mm.
Score Lounge. Shout out to these guys, High Score Lounge in Ferndale yesterday. It was so cool, and it was such a trip, But they let people come in, and they spend a little bit of money to play. They spend like $5 an hour. It's kind of crazy how inexpensive it can be.
Hmm.
They'll just let these people hang out and play all these different devices. I'm curious.
Huh.
I didn't ask what they did for licensing. I wonder how that works out.
Yeah,
How that works, because that's a little different model.
it is another different model. Yeah,
But
exactly.
those things are popping up all over the place, and what's tied into that is eSports, which is a whole nother world that I haven't
Hmm.
known anything about. They've got teams where people compete in shooting games or fighting games or whatever kind of video game they play, and they have competitions, and you can go and go join this competition, and 20,000 people show up in an arena to watch these 10 people compete in this video game, and you can win like $3 million. It's staggering.
Weird.
It's so crazy.
That is interesting. Wow. Wow.
And with the exception of
Huh.
football, it's more watched than all the other sports. Like maybe a prize fight, maybe a big, like the Merriweather Conor McGregor fight that's coming up. It's
Yeah.
it's
And people are running around in the VR things?
No, because they're just regular like PlayStation
Oh,
games or Xbox games.
got it. Oh, okay. I know what you're talking about. Okay.
But
I'm like,
but
that doesn't
VR
sound that thrilling.
VR is
Okay.
coming up next, right? So they're going to be doing the
Ah.
same thing in virtual reality. It's
Well, I
only a
suppose
matter
if
of
you could
time.
see it on a big screen or something like that,
Yeah,
that would make a little more sense. Okay. Well, and
picture.
then what's up with the roller coaster thing? I'm like, I couldn't do it, I don't think. Like riding a roller coaster with a VR headset, my stomach would be going, no, just
Mm-hmm.
not. No. It was bad enough doing you saw my video, obviously. That was bad enough, but
We'll have to link that again
but
just in
being
case.
being really, really on a roller coaster.
Yeah,
True. And with, I don't know, that
with the
sounds
VR
like
goggles.
nuts. That sounds nuts.
There's a big one. She's referring to one in SeaWorld, I assume.
I think so.
That's
Florida,
a
I know.
big one
Yep.
in Florida,
Okay.
that just launched about 2 months ago. And my thought was the whole roller coaster ride's like 12 feet long, right? You don't actually even go anywhere. You just
Really?
go. I no, I don't think that's true,
Oh,
but
oh, I'm
they
like,
totally could have done that,
I
and you'd
suppose.
have no idea whether or
I
not.
suppose you go in a little circle and go up and down hills.
That's it. You wouldn't know. You can with a rumble floor with air jets, right? Because here's the thing with what's
It's like
going on
4D, like a
is
4D movie theater. I remember I went to one in Wisconsin Dells,
yeah.
and it was, all of a sudden you're getting water sprayed behind you and air coming up. Yeah, very similar thing. Yep.
That's what's happening in this space now. I was at Kalahari doing this install just because I needed to see what the process of an install was so I could help us figure out how to improve it and make it smart and better and good. And they had this VR setup that was kind of an all enclosed two booth kind of setup where you step into like a fenced in area that's 3 feet by 3 feet, maybe it was 4 by 4, and it was do this. And it was a shooter game, and you had the goggles on, and you would rumble back and forth, and the whole thing would shake, and it was like just such a trip. And you couldn't get yourself in too much trouble because you couldn't go too far. You would have hit the fence around you. But I was like, wow, it is amazing to me the different level of experiences that are available.
Yeah.
The,
Wow.
the newest one that came out that we just launched to our customers, I think it was, I don't know, maybe it's not the newest one, second newest one now, but it was called Drunken Bar Fight. And it's exactly what you think. You go into the bar, you drink a couple of beers, and you just start punching people. And it's got some augmented reality features to it where you could take your cell phone, snap a selfie, you can upload the selfie, and then your face ends up on the different patrons of the bar.
Oh, really?
So you
Oh
can
my
go fight
gosh.
your buddies in VR now, which is why wouldn't you want to do that? That just sounds like a
Oh
ride.
my gosh. That's great.
So
That
crazy.
reminds me of my kid's graduation party. We got these big heads, is what it's called, and it's a big head of him.
Yeah.
And then we had three of them, so three of us would take a picture with Jared's face everywhere. That was the most popular thing there was, and come over, so similar thing, but ours was a piece of cardboard. But
So you're not you, but and you weren't punching each other, I assume.
exactly, no punching, no
No, but
punching, no
I
that
actually,
involved.
I surprised my wife on her 40th birthday party, and I had those exact things that you're talking about. So I know those are
Yeah,
so funny.
they're entertaining. Yeah,
They're
they're very. But
so
what's
fun.
funny is when you post it on Facebook. Here's a lesson: you post it on Facebook, and it automatically tags people. Every single person was tagged with Jared because Jared's face was everywhere.
Absolutely, absolutely. That makes total sense.
Ah, that's good.
That makes total sense. So it's been a wild ride. We started off looking at all the different things that you could do in virtual reality. I was having conversations in the medical profession talking about
Yeah.
how we could do different things there, and with travel and with the cruise line, and we were looking at that, and we looked at real estate for a little while, and all of those are really awesome applications for virtual reality, right? But at some point, you have to just kind of stick a stake in the ground and say, this is what we're going to focus on and go to town. And so we kind of jettisoned all of those extracurricular
Hmm.
activities and have really just doubled down on going after mostly family entertainment centers, right? Whether it's a bowling center, we found some really good fortune inside of bowling because the
Sure.
convergence of needing something new with something old, right? Bowling centers they're not bowling alleys anymore. They're now
Well, a
bowling
lot of them have
entertainment centers.
arcades. Don't I
Exactly.
mean most have arcades that I know of. I mean, if they're a decent size, unless they're a
Yeah.
teeny little, like Farmington where I live, this teeny little dive bowl. But they even have like a couple games,
They still
arcade
have
games,
games, right?
But yeah, yeah. But then there's the bigger ones that have just a lot of times laser tag
Mm-hmm.
too. Correct? Yeah.
Yeah,
So that
absolutely.
makes sense. So now backing up to what you're saying, let's talk business wise. You niched down to what should be focused you tried a bunch of different things
Hmm.
and you learned from it and you learned what did work, what didn't work. And then you guys really niched down and now you're focused in on that.
We're in 4 lanes right now, right?
Got
And,
it.
and realistically, right this second, we're in one, so we can do proof of concept, and then we're gonna go boom, 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 and hit the other 3 almost simultaneously. So
Mm,
my entire world, not entire, but almost my entire world consists of bowling centers. We went
okay.
to a huge trade show 2 months ago, back
Yeah.
in May. Was it May or June? Whatever. It was sometime in there.
That Mari Smith
Yeah.
spoke at.
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. That Mari Smith
Mm-hmm.
was at. Actually, it was in June. Um, and so we got the list. We created a little 30-second explainer video. We're taking that video. We're emailing people with the video to say, hey, cool, just check this out. This will really work for what you're doing. And then we're calling on that list, and we're going to do some retargeting through Facebook. And upload it to and kind of find that lookalike audience, right? Because our list is not inclusive of all bowling centers in
Got
the area.
it. Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what we're looking at.
That's good methodology. Yep.
And
Mm-hmm.
once we can continually drive down that vein and start opening a few more of these centers, we're going to take that and we're going to go into trampoline parks. We're going to go into laser tag facilities, and we're going to go into family entertainment centers in general. So the key is to be at the right place at the right time, and so far we absolutely are.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well,
in
you're
fact,
early adapters with this for sure.
yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because here we are, at the time of recording, the end of July 2017. This stuff is 5 quarters old, right? That's it.
I
The
know.
HTC Vive and the Oculus Rift came out in April, within a week of April 1st, 2016. So it's literally 15 months old. Um, I don't think that the mass adaptation has happened like some of these folks have predicted, but I think some of that's been a little bit of cost prohibitive, and I think a lot of it has been
Uh,
a misunderstanding. The other side, and I think this is a real problem. I'm having visual aids today. So this is the Samsung Gear VR, right? This is the thing that you could plug your phone into
yes.
and actually see virtual reality.
Isn't that a pretty low level one? Kind of.
Total bullshit. They can't call it
I was
virtual
gonna say
reality.
crap, but
Yeah,
okay.
it's listen, don't get me wrong. It's cool, and what you can see in there is pretty neat. And it's almost like 360 degrees, or at least 210 degrees, and you feel like you're in the situation, whatever
Yeah.
that may be. And that part's
Just a
kind of
very low quality because I did try one of my kid's friend had it too, and I was like, ugh, this is nothing compared to the
no.
PS4 one.
So for them to call the Samsung Gear stuff VR, and for them to call HTC Vive or the
Oh,
PlayStation VR or the Oculus Rift VR, it's like saying this Maserati is a nice car and this '87 Volkswagen Jetta is a nice car. Yeah, they're both cars, sure,
that's a
but they're
very
not
good
the same.
analogy. Hmm.
It's not fair, right? It's not
No,
fair. You're going to be really, really disappointed if you go into Samsung Gear and think that that's the best VR experience you can get.
good
And
point.
by the way, the Gear is the high end of the crap, right? That's top shelf crap. There's significant crap below that.
Oh yeah, I know.
Uh,
People have paid hardly anything, and I'm like, what? My kid paid X amount, I don't know. What did I say? $900 or something with all the gadgets and stuff. I'm like, yeah. So
you could get into
it's
the Gear or Samsung, or not Samsung, but Google Cardboard for like $15. And you can
yeah,
pop
that's
your
what I
phone
heard.
in.
10, $15. I'm like,
Yeah,
what?
totally.
Yeah, yeah. It
And by
can't
the
be the
way,
same.
I just want people to know that if you have an iPhone, you can still use those, right? People
Oh,
are like, "Oh, well, I have an iPhone. I can't look at." No, they work, right? Not all of them. The Samsung Gear VR does not work with your iPhone, hence the Samsung word, right?
got
That's
it.
incompatible. But a lot of them work with iPhones, so don't
Huh.
think you can't check
No, I
it out.
wouldn't have known that.
But for me, getting people in a real set of goggles is the way to go. And the
Yeah.
fastest way to do that is to, if you don't know where to go to Microsoft store, right? Go to the mall, find the Microsoft
Mm,
store. They've
yeah.
got the HTC Vive set up right there. They do demos all day long. Act
Huh.
like you're interested in buying it. On the flip side, Oculus Rift, they're giving these things away right now. They're like $399. You know, they when they came out, they were like $800. So they're basically half off. The downside or the challenge or the opportunity or whatever you want to call it is that the computer that drives these experiences has to be a high-end gaming console.
Got it.
So you're going to spend if you get away cheap, you're going to spend $1,400
Yeah.
on a
No, for
computer, right?
sure.
And that's on the low end. But the rest of it is pretty cool, man.
Hmm.
And while I don't know that it's necessarily worth it on a home use, it's a blast to go do. And there's VR arcades popping up everywhere. When I first got into this and I looked on Facebook, I found two. And now there's like 37 in Facebook, and I'm in a Facebook VR arcade owners community,
Yeah.
and that group's got 480 people on it. So
Wow.
there's VR. Not
It's
everybody
coming
owns
around.
VR arcade, but they're popping
Hmm.
up everywhere. I had a buddy of mine just this morning text me a picture of a VR arcade in Amsterdam. You know, so there's a worldwide map right now that shows about 450 of them. I expect that to be times 10 this year next time.
I would expect so too. And I would expect that business would embrace it more in the future, but I think, it's just not there yet for the average business. It's
It's
not
not.
ready. Hmm.
It's totally ready. It's totally ready,
No, the
but people,
businesses aren't.
but business isn't ready.
Yep,
The tech is there, and
yep.
there's some really cool stuff. If you go to a company called Matterport, Matterport, they're
Okay.
doing virtual tours of houses.
That's
So
where I could see it
real
being
estate,
really cool. Yep.
man. If you're not adapting this into your real estate business, you're just silly, you know. But unfortunately, it's like the fax machine, right? The first person to get a fax machine was useless, right? The fax machine was only good when a bunch of other people had them. So as this continues to evolve, you're not going to be driving around with your real estate buyer looking at 14 different houses. You're going to sit him in your chair. You're going to show him 14 different houses in the goggles. He's going to say, I like those two. And then you're
Yeah.
going to drive them to those two. He or she is going to say it.
We're actually looking at a car right now for my son. That would be kind of cool for because, the picture on the internet isn't really showing us properly. You don't necessarily see the roster. We looked at one yesterday, had a little dent. We get that we're not getting a high level car for my kid, um, but
Grant Johnson
it's
isn't getting a
medium.
high level
It's
car.
a medium. It's a medium. Spending a few thousand, so it's not too bad. But yeah,
How much
so
was your first car? Do you remember?
my dad bought it for me, so I don't know.
Oh,
It was a green dump
spoiled,
thing. It was probably
spoiled.
two-tone green. It was terrible. Yeah, it was terrible. It was probably under 1,000
I
easily.
bought my second car off of Becky Rasmussen. Do you remember Becky?
Oh yeah, still friends there on Facebook. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
Becky.
funny.
I bought my second car from her. My first car was $650. That was
I bet you mine was under 1,000 for sure. And then, back in the day, that was, even, but then my second one, I paid half, and I bought it with cash myself. And then, yeah. And, then you kind of moved up in the world a little bit at a time. But your first one shouldn't be good look. I mean, my kid wants this great looking car, and I'm like, you're going to probably trash it anyway. So, it's kind of scary. But
maybe he won't. Maybe since it's his and not yours, maybe he won't.
I don't know. Ever since he's gotten his license and cruised around town, now suddenly he hasn't done anything to my car. But when he's in the cul-de-sac, I don't know. Anyway, I don't get it. I don't get it.
Too funny. Too
Uh,
funny.
so
So yeah,
let's finalize this show because we only have about 2 minutes left. Let's finish it up with so this is what Terry's been up to, obviously, and he really understands the VR world. But I think this was a business lesson too. So it was good. We have a lot of business owners listening to this and just talking about the startup. So if you, I guess let's give a takeaway. What could they take away from this show?
The takeaway is twofold. It's be insanely curious and dive in and learn what you can about the potential markets, and then assess where the real opportunity aligns with your strengths, your interests, in the market need, right? And if you can figure that out, right? If you're good at it, excited about it, and people want to pay for it, dive in deep. And Janet, you know me as well as anybody because you've played psychotherapist for me a couple of times. Focus isn't really my strength, right? But I have been saying no to things left and right because they're not aligned with the things that I am focused on in the niche that we have picked. So from that standpoint, it's really cool.
Right on for any business. I think that's a great lesson tip for any business owner. We've been guilty of going a lot of directions and really niching into where the specialty is what you're doing. And that's a great tip to end with.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you so much, Jerry. And thanks, Ernie's, for joining us again.
Ernie's, all of the Ernie's.
Ernie's.
So many
Ernie's. They're like, who's Ernie?
Ernie's. Yeah, right. That's you, people, Ernie. Don't forget.
All right. Have a good one. Thanks.
Bye-bye.